Hey everyone, how are you all doing today? I wanted to make a quick video explaining about this new update to the EoC and Instance God Wars. As you guys all know, today was the release of the Instance God Wars and EoC updates news post, and basically we got a hard mode and an Instance God Wars, and we also got a change to the way armor is worked and weapons are worked. So it's really confusing for a lot of people right now because right now, everything is all over the place. I wanted to explain my opinion, and I found some things out that may be interesting or helpful to all of you who are not understanding what's going on right now and think that their armors are terrible now and panic selling and panic buying things. Relax, I hopefully will be able to help you within this video, so let's jump right into it. First of all, I'm not going to be talking much about the Instance God Wars right away because I haven't experienced all of it so far. I've been to Bandos, and basically it's a little bit harder. There's a rock attack that Bandos does that hits you all over the place, and it's kind of different and it's a little bit harder, but overall it's just pretty much God Wars but a little bit harder, and you have your own world. So I'll get into that probably in another video if I really have to explain it. There'll probably be a lot of other videos explaining that. But I'm going to talk about the EoC updates that you guys don't understand, all of the bonuses and all of this stuff that's going on that is nerfing all of your weapons and whatnot. So let me explain really quickly. First of all, when you are not overloaded, when you are on your base stats, if you open up the equipment screen, without an overload, you have 99 damage and you have 12/12 accuracy. So that's what your standard is, and then when you add weapons to it, it will change your damage, it will change your accuracy, as well as when you add armor to it. If it's offensive armor, it will give you a damage bonus, and I think a little bit of an accuracy bonus, depends on what kind of set of armor it is. And when you're wearing defensive armor, it'll boost your defensive stats and not your damage or accuracy. So without the overload, it's 99 damage and 12/12 accuracy. Now, if you overload, basically when the EoC was implemented, overloads boosted your stats to 116, and you pretty much got an invisible bonus and you thought you were hitting better, but really in the EoC, the overloads didn't really help you hit much, and you couldn't really notice it. Well, now you can notice what the overloads are doing, because if you just overload with nothing on, you'll notice your stats go to 116 damage and 1752 accuracy. So you're getting 540 more accuracy, and you're raising your stats from 99 to 116. I'm guessing damage is based on your level because it says 99 and that's what my strength is or attack is, and with the overload it's 116 and that's what the damage says. So I think that ties into each other, and overloads are showing the difference they make now, because back before, in the beginning of the EoC, they didn't show what they were doing. It was kind of like an invisible bonus, so to speak. Now you can see what it's doing. So that's the first thing you have to understand, is that overloads now show it instead of just having an invisible bonus. Also, don't be scared by the whole new interface. It's basically the same. The defensive things that says block now, don't be confused with that. Basically all it is that it used to be numbers. It used to say what your defense bonus was total. Now it tells you a percentage. So that's all that changed, is that your number has turned into a percentage, and your armor now has a percent damage resistance, or whatever you want to call it, to that kind of specific type, like mage, range, or melee. So don't be scared by that. That's just a small detail they changed. And with the new interface, you'll notice a new thing called hit chance, which is basically the chance you have to hit against every type of combat. And it's hit chance versus melee, hit chance versus ranged, and hit chance versus magic. Now basically, with an overload and no weapons, you can see here that it says hit chance versus melee is 20%, hit chance versus range, which is 30%, and hit chance versus magic, which is 8%, which is basically telling you the chances you have to hit on the combat triangle and what you should be using against what you want to be using it against. So basically, if you're versing something that's weak to melee, you want your hit chance versus melee to be as high as it can be, and that's how the whole combat triangle works. So you can technically see what you'll hit against the opposite thing you're versing, and it's all right there. So that's basically all that means. Don't be scared by that either. Next is that your weapons have either been upgraded a little bit or downgraded a little bit. Now, if you have Drygores like myself, you'll notice that the accuracy was the main thing that was changed. The damage is the same. The accuracy is what has been nerfed. It went from about 4,200 accuracy down to about 3,500 or so. And with the overload, it does bring it back up to the 4210 it was originally, or 42 whatever. And without the overload, it's 3,600 or 3,500, depends on your armor, depends what you're doing. And basically, they nerfed the accuracy by 1,000. So normally you were having your 4,000 accuracy plus the overload's invisible bonus of 1,000, so you were at like 5,000 accuracy, and that's what made the Drygores hit ridiculously often and high. And now, basically because there is 1,000 points less, but your overload says it's the same as what it was before. That's why you're hitting less, and that's why you can't use Drygores to hit everything, and that's why you're not hitting as often. So that's something else you guys got to understand, is that they nerfed Drygores because at the moment the accuracy was crazy and pretty much it was becoming Drygorescape, so everyone was using Drygores on everything, and that's not what they wanted the EoC to be. They wanted the EoC to really be a full combat triangle experience. They want you to take advantage of the weaknesses and whatnot, so they kind of put an end to Drygorescape, and they are still very good for melee and things that are weak against melee, but you cannot use it on things that are weak to range or mage because you will not hit as often as you were before. Also, if you have Chaotix, you'll know that they have not been improved so much, maybe a little bit, but they haven't been nerfed. Pretty much, Chaotix and Drygores are very similar now. It's not a big distinction between the level 80 Chaotic and the level 90 Drygore, but because it's level 90, obviously it has more accuracy and I think a little bit more damage, but Chaotix are fairly close to it now. Drygores are obviously still worth it, and they're still the best weapon in the game for melee, and you should definitely keep your pair. I'm not telling you to go sell them because Chaotix are the same. It's definitely worth it if you have the money for them, but it's not as big as a distinction as it was, how Drygores were way better than Chaotix. So if you can't afford Drygores, Chaotix are still a good substitute. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was the change to armor. Now, there's 3 different classes of armor pretty much. It's an offensive kind of gear, which is a power gear, which raises your offense and damage, and it lowers your defense. It doesn't lower your defense, but it doesn't give you as much defense as the defensive armor would give you. There's hybrid for equal stats all around for every combat style, and then there's tank gear, which is the defensive kind, which gives you most defense, but no offense really, no additional damage or accuracy. So you have 3 kinds of classes of armor. Now, how I can explain it is, Torva is pretty much an offensive gear now. You have Bandos and Torva for the damage and accuracy additions, and they give the same defense, but not as much as what Tetsu does. Tetsu has become fully defensive now and does not give as much damage or accuracy, so basically you can use Torva for if you're trying to do DPS or if you're trying to do the most damage, and you can use Tetsu for if you're tanking something and you want to have the most life point boost, etc. And an example of hybrid gear would be Void Knight armor and Obsidian armor. If you use Void, you probably already know that there's no defense bonus on Void at all anymore. It's strictly offensive, but it's also for hybrid gear. You could switch the helm still, and it does give the right amount of bonus. Now, Tetsu is pretty much the same. Torva's what really got changed, as well as all the next gears and all of the God Wars gears in general. Now they are all offensive, so Subjugation, Virtus are the offensive mage, Bandos and Torva are the offensive melee, and Pernix and Arma are the offensive range. So those are all offensive geared stuff that usually are used for damage and accuracy, and the pop gear such as Sea Singer, Death Lotus, and Tetsu, they are all for defense and tanking, as well as Barrows. Barrows is also for tanking now. Torags, Guthans, Karils, Arims, Akrasei, Darox, and Verax, I think I got them all. All of those are all tanking gear now. There's not really a power gear for Barrows or Pop. So it's pretty good. I kind of like that whole system, although I think it's a little flawed at the moment. And this is what I really wanted to talk about in this video, is my opinion on this update. First of all, I'll say this. I think it was extremely rushed. Today, we needed the Instance God Wars. That's what we were promised. I don't think we needed this change to combat because so much was thrown at us, and we pretty much have to relearn how to use combat now. We have to really focus on using the combat triangle, which I agree with, and I'll talk about that later. But I really feel that we didn't need this right now. I felt like it could be held back a little bit and more developed and tested and worked on before it was thrown into the game. And right now it just looks like it was thrown into the game. You've got problems such as White Boots, which is an armor that doesn't make any difference and isn't relevant at all, and it has the highest prayer boost in the game. It's got 75 prayer boost. Now, that's ridiculous. That's more than pretty much every prayer boosting item combined. So I feel that White Boots are obviously a glitch. There's things that got to be fixed. I feel like the gap between 80 defense armor and 90 defense armor isn't as big as it should be. I feel that the 80 weapons and the 90 weapons aren't as far as they should be, bonus wise, and I just think there's a lot of problems that they really didn't pay much attention to or test at all. So I feel that this was a little rushed, and I think it could have waited. Moving on, I think this is actually necessary for the game. Ever since the EoC came out, they really wanted to stress using all of the combat styles and balancing the combat system. Now, balancing the combat system is mainly for PvP. So if people mage, if you use range against them, you'll kill them. If you use melee against a ranger, you'll kill them. If you use mage against a melee guy, you'll kill them. So I think that the balancing was mainly for PvP, but for PvM, they really wanted you to use the weaknesses of each boss. And ever since Drygores came out, everyone's been using Drygores on everything. They haven't been using the weaknesses, they haven't been using mage or range, and that's because Drygores are a 90 attack weapon. It's the only tier 90, I'll say, weapon in the whole game for melee, range, and mage. There's no counterpart to range or mage that's level 90, and I feel like that's a big problem. Now, when they released Drygores, I felt like they should have added a tier 90 range and magic weapon as well, because that would balance things, and people might use magic or range on the other things that are weak to it. But the big problem was that Drygores were really overpowered, and they did lower them down a little bit now, but it's almost like it's too much, and it doesn't really show that it's a level 90 weapon. And now you have to use your kind of combat triangle for everything, and I think that's a good concept. I actually enjoy it better, as I'm showing here, is my team is doing KK, and now we're doing it with a trio method instead of just Drygoring it like you guys all know. We're using mage on the magic weakness, we're using range on the range weakness, and we're using melee on the melee weakness, and we're all switching between melee, range, and mage. So you can see that here, and the kill goes very smoothly, and I think that's what the EoC was all about. That's what they were trying to implement from the start, is so that people can use the right things on the right bosses, and that's why they have a weakness, that's why it's there. But this was done in the entirely wrong way. You're not supposed to make things worse in the game. You're supposed to make better and harder things in the game. Obviously they made a harder version of God Wars, but they should have bosses that are harder to kill, more of a raid type style, more HP, harder attacks, a certain amount of people to actually kill the thing. I don't really know how Jagex would do that, but I'm pretty sure we can all compile a bunch of suggestions to do so. But we need something like that. We need more hard things to get harder equipment, to get higher tier equipment. We need to have a system like that. You're not supposed to be nerfing things constantly so that everything's fair. You're supposed to make things harder so that we have a challenge with the good equipment. And I feel that this is kind of a drawback because obviously there's so many people that are iffy about the EoC. I think it's a very good thing, and I think it's going to increase the longevity of this game, but I really think they have to do it in the right way. They have to approach it with time. Put things in gradually. They just throw things at us right now. They said that the EoC was rushed and was implemented too early. Well, this was implemented too early as well, as I said on Twitter. This could have waited. Test it out. Make sure everything's good. When you put something in the game, it shouldn't have to be fixed majorly. Like, look how much has already been fixed. They already had to fix the hit chance on Drygores, the accuracy on Drygores. They had to fix white boots, which they haven't done yet. It's got 75 prayer bonus, which I'm sure is wrong because every other boots doesn't have that. And there's just so many problems that I can't even name off the top of my head that they've already had to fix and haven't been fixed yet, that this shouldn't happen. If there's a test team, you should be able to handle this, and you should be able to look and monitor what's going on. If they've been working on this since they announced it 2 months ago, this is a really, really poor job. And I have a lot of faith in Jagex. I always restore my faith in Jagex all the time. I have faith in Jagex, and I believe this can be done right, but they're not taking their time. They're rushing it in, and they're just throwing it at us, and then they're making all the changes as they go. They're still making the EoC better, and then they throw this at us, and they gotta make this better now. It's just kind of cleaning up the mess, and by the time something else is released, there's another problem, and then they have to fix that problem, and then they have a new thing that's going out, and it's just a constant repetition of fixing the mistakes, and they really need to take their time. I'd rather them work on this for an entire month and not get any updates for every week or whatever we get right now. I'd rather that and have a perfect system implemented than, rushing this stuff and just throwing it in there and then fixing it as we go. Obviously there's going to be problems with stuff when you put it in, but there shouldn't be this many problems. I feel like this is a good system. I like how the armor works. I like how you can have a DPS kind of gear and a tank kind of gear depending on what you're doing within a team and depending on what kind of boss you're doing. But I feel like they did it in the wrong way yet again. The 80 armor is way too close to the 90 armor. If you look at Bando's chest and Torva chest, they're pretty similar. They're not what they should be. Torva should be a little bit better, or Bando should be a little bit worse. And I think the same way with Chaotix. I feel like Chaotix should be a little bit worse, or Drygore should be a little bit better, just to increase the gap a little bit to prove that the 90 weapons are much better than the 80 weapons. So what I'm pretty much saying is that they should have took their time with this, because there's a lot of problems already. There's a lot of bugs and glitches, and a lot of numbers are wrong. It just seems so sloppy to me. When they put it in, it looks like all of the numbers were just made up and weren't double checked. So I feel like this could have been done differently, gradually, and just at a different time. We didn't need this right now, because now everyone's just panicking, armors are dropping, we finally steadied the economy on next sets and God Wars sets, and now everything's crashing and rising and falling. White boots are 50k and they were 5 GP or 25 GP from the guy. That's ridiculous. I mean, these things should be figured out and just constantly the economy is being ruined, and there's constant changes that are just way too much and way too much for people to adapt to. So that's all I really have to say about that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it really helped you understand a little bit more of what this revamp did, and I hope you guys understand a little bit more about what you're confused about. If you have any questions, put them in the comments or message me or something, and I'll try my best to answer them. You probably have the best bet of getting responded to if you list them in a comment or if you tweet me them. So that's that for this video, guys. I hope I explained things well, and I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from, and I hope you agree with me. And if you don't, oh well, obviously everyone has their own opinion. I think this is good. I want to use the combat triangle on everything. I don't think it should be Drygor Escape, but I think it should have been done in a better way. I think they should have took their time and thought this out, or just release things better, like tier 90 equipment all at the same time instead of just giving us Drygors, because in that way we would just be able to use what we're supposed to on what we're supposed to. So there's a lot of things that can be talked about. Obviously I can't cover everything in one video, and if I try to, there's going to be something wrong, or I probably already said something wrong and people are going to jump on my case. I'm just trying to explain what I think about this, and I thought it was very sloppy, and I think it's a good concept, and I like the concept, and I think it could be done really well and executed greatly. But they didn't do it on this one. They definitely rushed this, and it shows it. So that's my opinion, guys. It's only my opinion. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. You can disagree with me. You can comment, LOL, EoC, 07's the best. Why don't you come play 07? There's no problems like that. Obviously, there's going to be those guys. But have your own opinion. But definitely look at every side of the spectrum. And that's all for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Later, everyone.